Hello and welcome back once again to the William Hill Square Ball podcast. Dave McIntyre with you as always. Great to be bringing you another episode in what is season 2 of the Square Ball. Make sure you get in touch with us as often as you can. We say to you every week, we love to hear from our listeners and from our viewers. Log on to our YouTube page, the William Hill Square Ball YouTube page. Subscribe to us, leave a review. Let us know what you think of previous episodes. They're all up there in the archive. Season 2, we've had the likes of Owen Kelly and Tommy Walsh in. Last season, we had 15, 16 episodes. They're all still there. Some brilliant interviews with the likes of Kevin Cassidy and Aisling Thompson and Sean Kavanagh. They're all up there. Please go back, have a listen. Let us know what you think. We'd love to hear your suggestions as well as to any potential guests you would like to hear from in the future. And if you do find something in previous episodes that had piqued your interest or maybe triggered a question or something, lash them on to us either through our comment section on our YouTube page, or you can also subscribe to the William Hill Instagram page and the Twitter page, where you'll get loads of other sports content on there. Leave a review on your podcast app, whether it's Spotify or elsewhere, wherever you get your podcasts. We always enjoy hearing from our listeners. So delighted to say once again for today's episode, we are joined by Kerry Great, Darren O'Shea.
Well, I'm O'Sullivan, but Marc Ó Sé is coming later.
It's great to have the Shays in. Yeah. And we're going to have a Shay in today. I know the one question I wanted to ask you, Darren, is whether it's an O'Sullivan or a Shay or an O'Dwyer, in Kerry they always seem to drop the O. I never got that. Mick Dwyer, Darren Sullivan, and today's guest, the great Marc Sé.
Yeah, it's lazy journalism. We didn't take the soup. I'm an O'Sullivan. Marc's an O'Shea. Yeah, no, I don't know what it is. Even on Twitter, actually, and Instagram and all that, I dropped the O for that. But yes, I think it's just we're lazy. It was Marc Sé, Darren Sullivan. It's just Declan Sullivan, Mick Dwyer, yeah. But we all have the O. We're just
too lazy to say it.
Too lazy to say it. It's shorter.
Just that one syllable too many.
That's one too many.
Yeah, well, you never look too lazy when you were on the football field. We, last week, myself and Darren, we almost sort of delivered a State of the Nation episode, because the way the provincial football championships were going, we just had to talk about them, and we're not going to do that today. Obviously that was a one-off, because unfortunately, given events that transpired in the last week, that episode is dated. It's pretty much the only episode of the last 10 or 15, if you do go into the archives, that will be dated already. Everything else is still there to listen to, no matter how old the episode might be. But I was buzzed last week about the start to the provincial football championships. I remember saying to someone that I felt it was the best start to a provincial campaign across all 4 provinces since the 90s, going back to the pre-qualifier days when it was a straight knockout. Last weekend, it's Tuesday now that we're recording today, Darren. I'm still absolutely buzzed. I managed to find the time to watch every game from the weekend, hurling and football. But I was commentating on Dublin Meath, a historic occasion. Armagh Tyrone was an absolute banger of a game. There was plenty in Donegal down to get your teeth into, albeit it looks fairly one-sided in the end. Kildare Louth ebbed and flowed. Last 20 minutes was nail-biting. Just brilliant.
Yeah, it's like we were talking about it last week, and we talked about how great it was, and it surpassed that the weekend just gone. And obviously the quality has been brilliant, and I think there was probably a bit of fear that this 2-point rule might extend the gap between the bigger counties and so-called lesser counties, but it's actually closed the gap. What we're seeing is maybe more the underdogs taking their 2-point shots and getting that bit closer. But just the games have been brilliant. The quality's been brilliant, but also there's periods in all the matches of madness, chaos, mistakes we made. But that's exactly what we want. We don't need perfection. We want end to end. The tap and go has been a revelation, I think. But just in fairness, you just have to give credit to all the teams that have played, because there's nobody going out there to contain. I don't think you can contain someone anymore. You just have to go for it. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing both teams, no matter what game it is, going for it and leaving it all out there. And they've just been brilliant. Like, the weekend was as good a provincial weekend as we've ever had.
But we're saying this for the second weekend in a row. Yeah. And that's the beauty of it. The only pang of sadness I get when I'm watching all of these games and trying to find the time to kind of binge watch 4 matches over a 2-day period, and knowing that I still have a couple to go back and watch, is that it's all going to be over in a few weeks' time. And I said this last week as well. If everything's on top of everything else, we're not going to get into a whole calendar debate again, but the GA got so much right. Yeah. Jarlath Burns, so responsible for putting this FRC together. The rules have transformed the game. I was so pessimistic about Gaelic football. It's the sport I dined on, grew up on. Dublin Meath rivalries, grew up on them. sick of standing on the hill watching Meath beat the Dubs. And to see what happened at the weekend as a Dub, obviously you're trying to be impartial when you're in the commentary box, but even my young fella who's 10 has never seen Dublin been beaten in the Leinster Championship. He was okay with it because he knows, and I'll be talking to him about the days when Offaly and Westmeath and Laois and Kildare and Dublin and Meath were all contending for the Leinster Football Championship, that they were great days. I'm not saying they're back now on the back of one Dublin defeat, but how refreshing it was to see the aftermath and immediately people talking about Meath and Louth. In a Leinster football final, Louth haven't won it since 57 and Meath haven't won it since 2010. And let's face it, they shouldn't have won it that year either.
Yeah, but it just adds excitement, and everybody feels now, if they can do it, why can't we? And I just think it's going to just bring more and more people going to the games. Like we said, it is very rushed.
The crowds
You
are
asked
terrible,
me
though.
2 years
Where
ago.
are the crowds?
Yeah, but they'll start coming back because the quality has been good, the excitement is good. I still think we have this expectation that it's going to be as it has been for the last 10, 15 years. But if you told me last year or 2 years ago you have to watch 4 games a weekend, I would have probably cried. Do you know, it wasn't good. It wasn't.
You
good
might have
to
watched the last 10 minutes to see if it's worth it.
and that'd be tough enough. But now you're actually, how can I watch all 4 games? Do you know, which is unbelievable. I'm not saying it's going to be like that every weekend, but so far it's just been brilliant.
Yeah.
And it's not about bigging it up too much. I just think, look, Kerry were nearly beaten, probably should have been beaten by Cork. All of a sudden you could have had a Cork-Clare Munster final, and obviously we don't want that down in Kerry, but all these shock results, we call them, or close calls, it's just going to add more and more belief. Like you see the way Meath started the game with that bit of belief, and all of a sudden that belief just grows and grows. And then you're looking at these supposed bigger names, bigger players, and going, hold on, they're just another footballer.
Yeah.
Do you know, he's just
They're all
another
human.
guy doing the exact same training that I'm doing.
Well, I'm going to call it here. Clare to win the Munster Championship this weekend. First one since 92. Anyway, we got caught up in it again because it's just so bloody brilliant at the moment. And I can't wait for this weekend, and I can't wait for the weekend after. Let's get into today's guest, Marc Ó Sé. An old mucker of yours. You won All Irelands together. You soldiered together. You trained against each other. I'm sure you've marked each other plenty in training, given your respective positions. What do you think of when the name Marc Ó Sé is fired in your direction?
It's funny, when I went in first, you'd have to be on a Marc Ó Sé or a Tom Sullivan, and if you drop the O for Tom as well. But the thing with Marc is, you be marking him, you're going, there's a good chance he's going to outscore me today. And you're on the negative mindset straight away. But
so you're more worried about chasing him down the field
you would have been,
than giving him problems?
Yeah, and like that, he's a guy now who would be thriving in this conditions, because he did it for all his career. One-on-one, that's your man, you mark him. And it used to be funny, we used to have meetings, pre-match meetings, and Tom and Mark would be kind of ditch. Look, we need a bit of support. And Jack, but mostly manager, would say, yeah, no bother, more or less fobbed off. In other words, you have a man, mark him. Yeah. You're not getting, like, Tomas wasn't going to be saying to Mark, I'll drop back there and cover you. He was left on his own with the marquee forward 9 times out of 10, and it was a case of do what you're here to do, Mark, and beat your man. And by and large, that's what he did. Like, and for a forward, marking him every week in training or every second week, whatever it is, you're kind of going, no matter how tough it is, if I can get by on Mark, it's going to be way handier the weekend. And I was lucky enough, actually, I roomed with him our last couple of years together as well, and you know exactly what type of messer he is as well. So for all his good qualities, he has a couple of bad qualities as a roommate.
Yeah, well, I've never had to room with him. I've worked with him plenty, and he's a messer.
Oh,
but once he crossed that white line, there was no messing with this fella.
No.
We get him in.
But that's the thing, we'll get him in because he'll have plenty of stories.
He certainly will. This is the Marc Ó Sé episode of the William Hill Square Ball podcast. So time to welcome today's guest. He is a Kerry legend, 44 years old now, but he's as childish as he was when he was a 4-year-old. He was a multiple All-Ireland winner with Kerry. He played with his 2 brothers, with Dara and with Tomas, and he is one of the great Kerry names of the last 25 years. It's a delight to welcome to the studio Marc Ó Sé.
Thank you, Dave. Good to be here. Darren, how are things?
Yeah.
You got it all right except for the 44. I turned 45 last week, Dave.
Did you? Right, we missed. Just goes to show 10 Munster Championships, 5 All-Irelands, 10 years apart, 3 leagues, 3 All-Stars, a Munster Minor Football Championship. it was, and a footballer of the year in 2007, of course. Well, there aren't too many defenders on that list, which is it's a great list to be on. The one place I wanted to start with you, obviously it's a bit of a dynasty, not just your immediate family with Tomas and with Dara, but obviously Páidí as well, and the rest of the uncles. But how often are you reminded that you are like a Kerry Ó Sé with all the All-Irelands, and that you're Páidí's nephew? Is it something that when you retire, that's the end of it? Or the fact that you're in the media now, working regularly, you're still kind of out there and people can still see you? Like, how often do you end up talking on a weekly basis about being a Kerry All-Ireland winner?
Yeah, look, I suppose the fact that you live in Kerry, you are recognised. There's no doubt about that. There's funny, we were watching the Kerry under-20s last night, and Tomas was up and down the sideline, and my small boy Ty was looking at it, and he was looking at the back of Tomas's head, and he said, "Dad, you look really like you're Tomas." Like, and so, like, I think from a distance we look similar maybe, but yeah. And if I got €1 for every time somebody calls me Tomas, I'd be a millionaire. But look, yeah, it's still we're everything in football is everything carries football. We're always talking about football down there, and it's everything. But so yeah, you would be talking the whole time, you know. And during the summer months, then I suppose Kerry is a destination. People visit Kerry, and they come down to Kerry as well just to watch football and all of that. So yeah, it comes up quite a lot. But the older we get now, maybe they're talking about the younger players, the David Cliffords, the Shawnee Sheas, these fellas, and we soon become forgotten from the younger generation anyway, you know, because I always say that the Gooches and the David Cliffords of this world, they change the generation, the younger generation, to wanting to become forwards. Nobody wants to become a back now. They all want to become forwards. So I don't think that many, as the years go on, Dave, to answer your question, I'm becoming less recognisable, I think, and there's fewer people asking me those types of questions.
When he's saying that, all I can think of is nobody wants to grow up being Gary Neville.
Yeah.
But there was plenty of people, Mark, to grow up wanting to be Marc Ó Sé.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, no.
When you were a player, and like say the week of a big game, were there always people in Kerry that wanted to talk football?
Yeah. Actually, funny that you say that. The fella sitting to your left, like, whatever about me, I could go into my own little bubble, but this guy, I remember going into the bank one day, and himself and Kieran Donaghy were working in the bank, and
in the same branch,
Ulster Bank,
working with a loose tongue.
Well, they were there. They were there. I'm not sure they were working, but so there was a queue. There was two huge queues for Darren and Kieran, and there was two lovely ladies then who were on the other desks, and there was nobody waiting for all they wanted to talk about was the Munster final. And the two boys, I think he actually put up your hand and said, "Listen, come on, something has to give here. Give me a job."
We're not here to work here.
Yeah. So.
And would you mind? So I'm thinking maybe we'll get into it in a bit more detail. But say 2002, for example, your first All Ireland.
Yeah.
If someone wants to come up to you and chat in the street about, Jesus, what are you expecting from Armagh this weekend? Was that tough? Or are you happy enough to kind of indulge and talk and say nothing?
Well, we were well schooled, well trained by Páidí on, where to be, where not to be. Don't be putting yourself out there in those situations. And we didn't. We just kept ourselves to ourselves. We hung around amongst ourselves, our own people, in our own areas. So that was what we did. We didn't really mingle. I see there, and lately the great Dublin team, I heard stories that a lot of them used to turn off their social media for a couple of months. There was no social media back then. Darren was probably the first to start it with the Twitter, but there was no social media back then, and we just did our own thing. We were lucky. We were growing up in Ventry. I mean, okay, it was during the summer. There was a lot of visitors, but we did our own thing, kept to ourselves. And then, of course, the big night was the media night, and that was the first time where you'd be in a room with all the journalists, all the media. And back then, it's insane when you think of it. There was 30 on the panel. There was 30 players inside in the room with all the media. And it became famous. It became the night of the Yeras. How are you going to get on the next day? Yera, look, we have a good chance, And we said a lot, but we said nothing. And I think Páidí got schooled by Mico in that. And then Páidí schooled us, obviously. And we became good at saying a lot but saying very little. And then when you come out the other end, like now, and you see it, like, and you say, geez, what was all that about, you know? But I think the big thing was the papers, the Sunday papers. There was, Páidí used to always say, the day to be in the papers is on the Monday, in the back page, not to be in the centre of the sports page doing a 2-page spread. And his logic was simple. Like, he said, look, you open the paper and you're marking this guy and he's got a 2-page spread. And this is fodder. This is brilliant. Like, you know, use this. And as a player, I would use anything in my power. Just give me a small bit of an edge over the opponent. And if I saw that, that was just brilliant. So we were well trained in that. And like, we would never. Well, there were certain players that were quite good at it. Darragh Kineda, for example, he was excellent at that. He'd take that all day long, and I suppose Páidí, his manager, Jack, after that, they knew that this guy was well capable. He's a journalist now. He was well capable of dealing with all that, you know. But there were certain players that just didn't want to do it at all, you know. So
we had Joe Canning on the podcast last year, and this was coming to the end of your career. It was around the 2012 All Ireland final against Kilkenny, and remember he made that comment about Henry.
Oh, yeah,
about the lack of sportsmanship.
Yeah.
It was actually a compliment.
Yeah.
And the whole thing got twisted horribly.
Yeah.
And Joe was scarred and still talks about it.
Yeah.
And you can see a player seeing what Joe went through and thinking, I am saying nothing ever again to any journalist ever.
And with that, Dave, you see, the one thing where we had actually no problem doing was TV interviews. No problem whatsoever, because they could never change the narrative. They could never change what you were saying. Whereas if you write do an interview with whoever, the heading, they can put whatever heading they want on the piece that you're writing. So like, you had to be so careful what you were doing, what you were saying, where you were going. So TV interview was fine, radio interview was fine, but like when it came to newspapers, all bets were off.
Yeah,
you know.
You mentioned Bentry there, Arden Voher. For us, outside of Kerry and elsewhere in the country, and even you, Darren, who obviously lived in a different part of the county, albeit just as beautiful and idyllic, we have this idea in our heads of just these O'Shea brothers and family members constantly with a football in their hands. It's still bright at 10 o'clock in the evening, even if it's December, and it's always warm. It never rains in Dingle. And these are kicking scores, and you're pretending you're Mick O'Connell and Mick Dwyer and all these boys, and you're looking at Páidí and the great Kerry greats from the 8 All-Ireland winning team, and that it couldn't have been a greater childhood and a greater upbringing. Now, obviously, I'm exaggerating massively there, but like, what was it like to be an O'Shea brother and that dynasty and everything that goes with being a Kerry man loving football in that part of the world?
I was close enough to that, to be totally honest with you. It was
dark at 9:30. That was the only difference.
Yeah, it was. It was an incredible time to grow up, because where we were, Darren, I know you, when you were in England, you had soccer, so you were kind of introduced to that. But where we were, it was Gaelic football. That was it. I remember during the summer, we were a family that would watch all sports. We'd watch the tennis. We'd watch Wimbledon. We'd watch the snooker. We'd watch the hurling. Shawnee Leary, the famous Cork hurler, was great friends with my mum and dad. Himself and his wife Geraldine. Their son Tomas went on to play scrum half with Ireland, and Tomas and Kieran, the two boys, they used to come down and stay with us for 2 weeks during the summer. And for that 2 weeks, we'd play hurling and everything. And my mom was cracking up because there was slitters flying and breaking windows and the whole lot. But for that 2 weeks, we'd actually play hurling. For the week, the tennis, you'd be playing tennis. When the Masters came on, you'd play a bit of golf. But it was all football. And we never played any other sport in terms of like competitively. We never played any other sport. So, yeah, and then, like, you know, you talk about the geography in West Kerry, you talk about the geography in the Ghaeltacht. The Ghaeltacht's a huge area, sparsely populated, but huge area. So, you know, nowadays, my small fella, he started off playing under 6, under 8s. There was nothing but under 12 when we started off. So I started when I was 8. And Gallara's football field is like 8 miles from Ventry, from my house. So an 8-year-old and my brother Tomas, a 10-year-old, we get on our bikes and we cycle back to Gallara's as 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds, and we train. and we cycled back home, and that was it. Like until Marc Ó Sé became a selector who worked with Radio An Ghaeltacht, no relation, but he was a huge mentor of mine growing up. But he was the coach then, so we got a lift off him from under 14 on. But like hail, rain or snow, you would go back on your bike, you would train for 2 hours or an hour and a half, and you'd come home, and the crack we'd have, it was just incredible. But getting back to Ardavoher, getting back to Ventry, it was incredible. You had Fergal, Dara, Tomas, myself, and there would have been a gap of 8 years between myself and Fergal. He was the eldest. 5 years between myself and Dara, and 2 years between myself and Tomas. So it was always myself and Fergal against Dara and Tomas. And the boys used to beat the living shit out of me. Like
literally?
Literally beat the living shit out of me. And I'd go into the kitchen crying and into my mother. She'd dust me down. And the two boys, obviously Fergal was on my team, the two boys would be outside the window looking in at me, just like teasing the life out of me. So like I used to get this rage then, and I used to dust myself down and go straight back out. And that's the way it was. Like it was just, the crack was 90, like, and Fergal went off to college then. So then it was the three of us. So there'd be one in goals, and if it was me against Dara, he'd only be allowed to use his left leg. So there was different variations like that, but it was still the same crack.
Are there other kids around? Like, I know,
Funny,
it's as you say,
like,
sparsely populated. It's not like
yeah.
you're living in a big estate, but are there other kids who are kind of looking on who want to be involved? But
No, because if you go into Ardavoher, we were the only four boys. Páidí's gang, there was 14 years between my dad and Páidí, do you know? So there was my dad, there was my uncle Tom, there was 2 years between them. Then Páidí came along 12 years later. I'd say Páidí was a mistake. I'd say some mistake.
what a legendary mistake that is.
A legendary mistake. So Nasa, Shun and Padraig, our cousins, who'd be like brothers and sisters, they were just younger, do you know? Nasa being the eldest, she'd be 8 years younger than me. So it was only the four of us really. And like I say, during the summer then, famous Dublin player Robbie Kelleher, he had a summer house in Ventry, and the boys, Kieran, Rory and Declan, his sons, they used to come along and we used to play football with them, but it'd only be during the summer really, you know, but it'd mainly be the four of us because you'd come home, the school was only a mile back the road, you'd cycle home, you'd have your dinner and you were out in the outside playing football all day, you know, so that's, yeah.
So you're born in 80, you're only 6 when the last of that All-Ireland is won, when they beat Tyrone in the Pats Milan final in 86, so I don't know how conscious you were of what your surroundings were and what the pedigree was and what had gone on in the previous 11 years under Miko. But as your first real period of consciousness as to your background, coinciding with the worst period in Kerry football in decades?
Excuse me, yeah, without a doubt, because to make matters worse then, so 84, 85, 86, like, you know, I was there for 80, 81, wouldn't have a clue, obviously. 82 wouldn't have a clue. I was only 2. 84 still wouldn't know what's going on. 85 very much knew what was going on.
You remember 85?
I remember Páidí being the captain and the lorry coming into Ardavoher, the pub just built, and being hoisted up onto the lorry with the Sam Maguire, thinking I was 6 foot tall. And that was my first memory of, say, Kerry and what this meant. And a lovely memory to have. And then 86. But the big thing, Dave, was myself and Tomas were never brought to these games. It was always Fergal and Dara. Like, Dara has vivid memories of the 82 final, you know, where Kerry lost to 5 in a row. And so myself and Tomas would never have been brought. And an interesting point, actually, is Tomas's first time in Croke Park was 1996, when he was actually playing for the Kerry Miners against Mayo. It was his first time ever in Croke Park. It was my first time ever in Croke Park watching him. So there was that barren period where there was nothing. Like, Kerry got to a semi-final in 1991 against Down. Peter Whitnell got those two goals for Down. But that was it. So we actually grew up watching Cork. Cork were there 87, 88, 89, 90. They won 89, 90. Watching those incredible northern teams. Down in 91, Donegal 92, Derry in 93. I remember watching the 1994, was it the Ulster final or the Ulster semi-final? Down played Derry. it was as good as a match as I've ever seen as a young
It's
fella.
one of the great games.
It was incredible. It was like, and it had everything. And like, you know, you watch the meet, 1991, the 4 games Dublin meet. But like, you have to remember as well, back then, you'd only see around, 4 provincial finals. You'd see 2 All-Ireland semi-finals and you'd see a final. So you only saw 7 games. That's what you saw. Now, thankfully, we've GA+.
Shameless
Yeah,
plug.
Paid advert.
yeah. But yeah, so it was it was great times too, though, you know, because like, and that time it was knockout, it was championship, and like it was huge, and like if you lost, you were gone. That was it. There was no back door or anything, or you know. So
With Páidí, so you remember 85, so clearly you remember 86 and that final. And then it's Páidí and the rest of those guys are fighting against the dying of the light for those 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And people who are GA lovers should watch the Páidí documentary because it goes into detail the kind of the difficulty he has with that period. And obviously we've only just recently lost Mikko, and Mikko must have agonised over when and how to drop these fellas who had done so much for him and for the county. And you seeing Páidí being gently eased to the side for a man who was so obsessed with the game and so obsessed with playing for Kerry. Have you any memories of those couple of years?
Remember it well. I remember 88 he wasn't really playing well, and then in 89 he said he'd make one last real go of it, and he trained like a lunatic. I actually remember.
When you say he said he'll make one last real go of it, are these actual conversations that you guys are having?
Not with me, no. But like, I mean, afterwards, he'd have said it, you know, afterwards. But when he said it afterwards, I remember it back then when he was doing it, you know, because before they'd go back training with Mick O'Dwyer, they'd get themselves ready before they'd go back, because you had the heavy gang, they were called. You had like players like Páidí Lynch, Páidí, John Egan, God be good to him, Tim Kennelly, God be good to him, all these fellas. And then they used to
lads who'd winter well.
Yeah, and then you had a few hairs like Gerard O'Keefe, Tommy Doyle, who we'd throw in with them to kind of keep the standards high.
The pacemakers.
And yeah, so the boys would die a death. But before that would happen, they knew what was coming down the tracks. So they'd have a small bit done before that. So Páidí used to take off in his 14-mile trek back around Slea Head, and like the most picturesque scenery in Ireland. And he'd put on extra layers of clothing just to sweat more. Right. And I'd often see the likes of Ogie Moran back there with him, and the two of them. And I remember one day vividly, a beautiful spring evening, and they were on their way back, and Ogie, I'd say 200 yards ahead of Páidí, and Páidí dying a death, but not giving up, like, you know. And you'd remember those periods. But I remember 1989, Páidí was really working hard to come back, and Kerry played Lisbole in a West Kerry League final, and Páidí was playing full back, I think, on Liam Higgins, his great pal, and Dennis Higgins, Liam's brother, was there was a ball that was coming in towards Páidí, so Páidí left full back, or he left the full back position to go out and go for the ball, and he had this huge collision with Dennis Higgins, and the two of them were in a bad way after it. Páidí destroyed himself. He got, I'd say, half his ear was ripped off. He had to get stitches and the whole lot. But I remember him afterwards being in a brace for a couple of weeks, whatever it was, whiplash or whatever, but he was in a bad way. But that completely, you know, any chances of him coming back then was gone. And I'd say he found it hard. You know, he really, for a couple of years there, he did find it difficult. And then he went after the Kerry job then straight away. Didn't get it. Went for it again. Didn't get it. So he was, you could say he was probably lucky he didn't get it, you know, because the team that was coming up weren't that good, like. So in a way, he was possibly lucky that
it wasn't the time to be getting that job.
No.
Poor Mickey O'Sullivan, like the man who had to follow the man.
Yeah, this is it, like. And I mentioned there the down game in 1991. You look at the Kerry team, like, they didn't last too long, some of those players, you know. And you had a Pat Spillane who was 36 or 7, you know. So they were tough times for Kerry. So, as I say, we grew up not watching the great Kerry team. We grew up watching the likes of Stephen O'Brien from Cork. Teddy McCarthy,
Larry
Tompkins. Wow, like these players, Colm O'Rourke's, the Liam Hayeses, Mick Lyons, all these players. Grew up watching these great players. The Tohills after that, and the Mickey Linden. So that was the era we grew up in. So when Kerry got back in 1997, my God, it was massive. And I remember after Kerry won the All-Ireland in 1997, like the scenes on Denny Street in Tralee, Jesus, it's incredible.
Unimaginable to a county that has become so accustomed to just winning.
Yeah. And I saw some clip the last time where this man lifted Sam, and I think somebody said, was it the 5th or 6th that we had one in that decade? And you think wow, what a period.
We're kind of we're in that period again. I think Kerry have won 2 of the last 15. It's not quite the drought.
Yeah.
But
it is a drought.
Well, the 11 years was certainly a drought.
Yeah, it was.
The 8,
yeah. But I mean, you think about it, Dave. You take aside that win in 14. I mean, these games can go either way. We should have lost the semi-final to Mayo. If you didn't win that year, you're looking at a merciful drought.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So, look, we were lucky we won that one in 2014. Now, look, we won it on merit, but we were lucky too,
Obviously, the two boys, Dara and Tomas, are already playing for Kerry by the time you are. And you're a part of the Kerry minor team that won a provincial championship in 1998. But as they're getting recognised, is there a pressure on you at all? Do you see what they're doing, and does that drive you onto greater things and wanting to do what they're doing, or is there a pressure being Tomas's brother, Dara's brother, Páidí's nephew?
Jeez, there was a huge pressure on me. My God, I remember when I was growing up, I used to play the button accordion, and I enjoyed playing it, but there was a period then where I was playing in pubs, but it's funny when I look back on it now. A lot of people you say, "Oh yeah, there's three footballers, Fergal, Dara, and Tomas, and they have a musician as well." So there was a small bit of a stigma kind of attached to it, and I was looking at, what are you talking about?
Don't win the box.
So you had 3 footballers and a musician. So I was like, Jesus, is this what they're saying? So sure, man, laughing. But so I kind of I had to say to myself, jeez, the pressure here is huge, because Fergal was captain of the Kerry Miners. Actually, my uncle Tom, he won an All-Ireland minor medal. The only one of the O'Sheas to win an All-Ireland minor medal. And funny enough, his wife Rosanna, she gave me the medal after he died, and it's a medal that I hugely cherish to have that medal. And he was proud. He was proud that he was the only O'Shea to have an All-Ireland minor medal. But so then Páidí was obviously 3 years Kerry minor. My brother Fergal was captain of the Kerry Miners. Dara was a Kerry minor. Tomas was 2 years a Kerry minor. So it came to me, and I was on the panel. And I remember the first night the team was picked, we were playing Waterford, and the team was picked, and I wasn't on the team, and so I was driving the car home, and there was tears. It was, I feel as though I'm after leaving the O'Shea name down.
So what year is this?
This would have been 1998.
Okay.
And there was definitely tears. I definitely felt as though I'm after leaving the O'Shea name down, the family down. And funny, when I think back in it, there was no pressure from my family. I was putting the pressure on myself. So when I think back in it, it was never the team was picked. Nobody said nothing to me at home. We played Waterford, we drew. And
are you training and playing with this pressure? Is it affecting you?
Probably is, yeah.
I was going to say, was there an expectation around the county that just because of who you are, he's going to be good?
Yeah. Well, I'd say so, yeah. I would say so. And Kerry had won the All-Ireland in 97, and you would have been around, say, I remember the banquet 1997 in Dublin, wherever it was, the Burlington or wherever, and Páidí would have been there, and my dad, he was there, and the whole lot, and who's your man, about me, and
he's a musician.
And my dad just said, oh, he's going to be the next fella now, and all of this, and But yeah, so when I didn't make that team, oh geez, it was like my world was over, and we drew with Waterford, and lucky enough, you'd have some of the players, and they'd be in the car with the selectors come to training, and the next night in training, you know, the word was that I was starting for the replay, and yeah, I got in. The replay was in Tralee. I started wing back, and lucky enough, did well. We beat. That was actually a very good Waterford team. I don't know, was it your team, Darren? I'd say it was Gooch's team. They lost to Waterford.
Yeah.
But, lad, there was a very good Waterford football team there back then. I remember coming up against the likes of Gary Hurney. He was an outstanding footballer. And,
Great hurler as well.
Yeah, and I remember, if you fast forward to 2006, I don't know, were you on the scene at that? You were, yeah. 2006 in Killarney, we were under serious pressure against Waterford. There was like mayhem in the dressing room at halftime. So like that was that team emerging. But yeah, so played in 98, got on for the replay, and thankfully didn't look back after that. We went on and we played Laois in the All-Ireland semi-final the day that the Lily Whites beat Kerry, Mico and Páidí on the sideline. And I remember Charlie Nelligan, the Kerry minor manager, telling us, going out onto the field, the Cusick stand was built, the hill was the hill, the Hogan, it was the old Hogan stand, and we were in the old Nally dressing rooms, and coming out, I can still remember those concrete, tiny dressing rooms, and Charlie said to us going out, when you're playing into the hill, just be mindful, it's a sea of white. You'll find it hard to see where the goalposts are. And he was right, like, you know, but Laois beat us, and then that great Tyrone team were emerging. They beat Laois in the final, but that was the start of it.
When Darren was on with us a few weeks ago, we were talking about those minor days and how incredible they are, and they don't exist anymore because it's an under 17 grade. They're obviously taken out of Croke Park. They don't play those games on All-Ireland semi-final and final day. And that day I watched there's an extended highlights reel of that Kerry Laois game on YouTube, and I was having a look at it, and obviously by the time that game is in the mix and Beano McDonald's doing his stuff in the second half, all of the Kerry fans who want to see the seniors are there. Kildare the county's been emptied. The entire county of Kildare is in Croke Park. What is that like as a minor playing in front of a full stadium?
Yeah, like you said it there, Kildare, most of Kildare were at that game, and then you had the whole Mico Páidí thing, and that was massive. But then, of course, in the first half of that game, the stand was half full, not even. And then in the second half, it was a full house. Yeah. And Mikey Sheehy, our minor selector inside, he said, lads, you're going to go out here now to a full house. Just remember that. And he said, we're Kerry. And he said, just burst out with the ball. And I remember he was going to his position on the dugout on the Cusick side, and he says, bursting out now, Marco. He says, bursting out. Never forget him for that. And like, whilst we lost, but I played well in the game, and I look back in it. I know the YouTube clip that you're talking about, and look back in it. I was this scrawny young fella, like, you know, playing wing back, and marking this big strong lad from Laois. But yeah, it was. I remember Owen Brosnan. The things you remember: Owen Brosnan getting a red card towards the end of the game. One of the cleanest players you'd ever come across, like, you know, and Ty Kennelly playing, and all these fellas who would have gone on to play, Sean O'Sullivan, you know. So whilst we didn't win, we still had a few players coming through, which was great for Kerry.
Do you know, I just listened to him there, obviously with Páidí, his uncle, but I actually found, you know, in your minor, Charlie Nelligan as a trainer, Mikey, probably my favourite ever. Do you know, like, even being around them fellas, like even my latter stage when Mikey was selector. I just love listening to these fellas, but like as a 17, 18-year-old, having these guys mentoring you must have been.
Oh, it was incredible, because these guys played with Páidí. These guys played on that great team, and to have those fellas then in charge of you, you know, it was just a dream. And Charlie Nelligan growing up was a hero of ours. Mikey was just incredible. One of the greatest players that ever played for Kerry. So to have those fellas in your corner, you knew that you were 6 foot tall. You know, it was incredible time.
So it's 4 years before you make your senior debut, and Páidí's now the manager. Obviously, he's won the All-Ireland with Kerry in 2000 and in 97. And Tomás and Dara are already in there, well experienced. They're both All-Ireland medal winners by the time you make your debut. Yeah. So is the call-up inevitable? Are you expecting it a lot earlier than when it does come? Talk us through that time with Páidí and how you're brought in.
Yeah. I suppose physically I still hadn't developed. Okay, but I was actually playing very well in club games. I was doing well, but obviously club and county, there's a huge contrast. So in the year 2000, I would have been going in for trial matches to make up numbers for Kerry. So I would have been marking Mike Frank Russell a lot in training in 2000. And I used to watch, throughout my career, I used to watch forwards. I used to watch the way they'd make their runs. I'd watch the way they'd turn. And Mike Frank had an all-star that year. But Mike Frank used to love to run straight at the end line, put the brakes on quicker than the defender would, turn onto his left. And for that year, he had this signature point, this go-to point that he used kick. And he'd run with his right leg and he'd stop. And I kind of got to know it fairly quickly. So for those trial games, I was actually playing quite well. So you'd go home in the West Kerry car, as we'd call it, and at that stage, like there was Páidí at the wheel, Dara in the passenger seat, you'd Dara O'Cinneide, you'd An Ghaeltacht, you'd Tomás. No, I was there. So
how big was the car?
Yeah, well, Páidí had a fairly big car, but yeah. So after a while, we had to get two cars, but at the time, it's around the time where the Ghaeltacht are emerging, and you see. I suppose Páidí always felt huge pressure that you had four fellas on the Kerry team. Dara and Tomás, Aidan and Dara O'Cinneide. So he felt that they had merited they had at that stage. Well, Tomás and Aidan certainly had after 2000. The boys had done it previous to that. So like, I would imagine Páidí definitely felt under pressure to bring me in. And
under pressure from who?
I would say like the county. Do you know? I mean, I probably felt I had to do more than other people to change his.
Because I would have thought it would be the opposite. I would have thought Páidí would be under
everyone-
pressure
that's
not
what-
to be bringing these lads in.
That's what
because
everyone would have said. That's what
there's
everyone
the
would have said.
accusation of nepotism.
Correct. And I suppose in 1998, Tomás's first game against Cork, where his first championship started, and he's taken off at half time. Aidan Dorgan and Cork gave him a real baptism of fire. So, like, you know, I suppose that's the worry. And obviously Tomás went on then. He was excellent in 99 and excellent in 2000. But we played a county championship match against Johnny Crowley, or against Glenn Flesk, and Johnny Crowley was Kerry's best forward at the time. If Kerry had beaten Meath in 2001, Johnny was there was
an 18-month spell where he was utterly unplayable.
So we played Glenn Flesk in a county championship match, and I was marking Johnny Crowley, and I kept Johnny scoreless, and I think I got man of the match that night. And then and this is 2001 now, and like there was only 24 in the panel, so I'm still not in there. I'm still knocking on the door. Even though I'm getting my trials in 2000, I'm still knocking on the door, but still not physically fully developed yet. And then 2001, Kerry are playing Dublin, those two games in Thurles, and the second game, Tomás is going for a ball with Senan Connell, and Tomás absolutely drives Senan Connell halfway into the stand, and Tomás gets sent off. So I'm there with my father, God be good to him, and he says, my father is disgusted, like, you know, he's like so upset with Tomás getting sent off, because like he used to always go, like he'd bless us going out the door. You know, he'd say to Dara, he'd say, best of luck, keep an eye on Tomás. He'd say, like, you know, and he'd say to Tomás, he'd say, geez, hold your head today, will you? And then he'd say to me, just concentrate on your game. But obviously I wasn't on the scene yet. So in 2001, in that game against Dublin, Tomás was sent off. Of course, my mind was racing. And I said, Jesus, Dad, I said, if we get over the line here, I'll be in for the All-Ireland semi-final.
Silver lining and all.
Not giving a shit about Tomás, like, and he turns to me, like with pure disdain, like he was disgusted with my comment, like, you know. But of course, I was only thinking of one thing, and that's how it panned out. All-Ireland semi-final, I'm number 24 on the bench, and it was great. Jeez, it was great. Even if Tomás was, you know, it was great for me to be there. And
even though you're getting your arses handed to you by Meath.
Yeah, well, that, like, at the stage, give me maybe 3 or 4 days prior to that, right? And I'm going in and I'm like, I know now I'm on the panel, like, and I'm training with Maurice Fitzgerald, and I'm saying, Jesus, this is what I always wanted to do. And this guy to me was an absolute god. And you know, I remember going to the hotel, Tara Towers. It was out by Dunleary, kind of Blackrock, and we stayed there. And you know, I'd room with Owen Brosnan. I was rooming with Owen Brosnan for 12 or 13 years, and afterwards I started rooming with Darren. But I still didn't know Maurice Fitzgerald. And I remember getting into the lift, and Jesus, who was in the lift? Only Maurice Fitzgerald, and the two of us were going down, and he said, "You're in," he says. And I thought he didn't even know me, like, you know, and I am, yeah. Well done, he says. Well done, and that was it, like. And now I stood even 7 foot taller, you know. But that was it. And as you said, we got our arses handed to us in a plate. And I remember that game, and I remember in the first half watching it, and I think Tom O'Sullivan broke his jaw in the first half. And I said, geez, I'd be absolutely shitting it if I had to go in there now. I'd be shitting it. And then as the game wore on and it got so bad, my mindset completely changed. I said, I would love to go in there now. I would love to go in. And so then 2002 I was in, and I was playing really well and all was going good. And towards the tail end of the year, Cork, I would have been maybe 8 out of 10 in all my games, picked up a Man of the Match award in one of the games. And then Cork and Armagh, those 2 last games, you could say Cork 6 out of 10. And the Armagh game, the final, oh my God, I'd say 4 out of 10, you know. So
who were you marking that day?
Diarmuid Marsden. I actually met him last week in the game. I was up at an Ulster Championship game in Clonus and met him. And just for a brief second, but I met him also a couple of years ago in the Ghaeltacht back in Gollers. Lovely man, but like, he kicked 3 points off me that day. And Diarmuid was like, he was a block, you know. And but she was, look, that's all part of the development. It's all part of the, you know, learning and trying to become better. I suppose crashed and burned that day, you know, and definitely learned from it though.
You know, it's funny to hear Mark talk about going to the dressing room, even looking up to Maurice Fitzgerald, because of all the growing up around Páidí, having Mikey as your selector and Nelligan and you know, going into the dressing room, it must have been a bit easier having all the Gaeltacht lads, because I remember walking into the Kerry dressing room the first day, seeing you, Tomas, you could name them all out, and being a bit embarrassed and shy and afraid to say hello. I find it like hard to imagine him being a bit fanboy with Maurice Fitz, but like, you know, it must have been a bit easier having the backup of obviously your brothers there, but Canada, Aidan McCarroll, like the Gaeltacht were a dominant team then, like you, like you must have had a bit of extra confidence going in. You weren't alone.
Definitely,
backup.
No, look, I look at young fellas today that make it on merit. Look, I said I made it on merit, but you look at fellas who make it on merit, but go in there like that, where they've no one else there, and that's why I think it's so important when young fellas do come in that you kind of put the arm around them and say you're welcome and the whole lot, and give them a nice welcome, because it's a daunting place to go when you go in there first. And even for me, who had 2 brothers and an uncle and all of that, and two other teammates, but certainly it's a tough place to go. And then when you get in there, you have to try and perform. And like, geez, a funny story actually. I remember you'd still have your cliques, you know. I mean, no matter what team you're in, darn, we became very friendly. There was like as the time went on, and you know, you'd have different cliques. But I remember this day, Páidí came down on the lift, whatever hotel we were staying in, and outside the lift was Tomas, myself, Dara Kineda, and Aidan, the 5 Gaeltacht fellas. And Páidí just gave one look and he says, Jesus Christ, will he scatter? Like, he can lose me my job, he says. So there was that element of it, like, but I suppose the other side of that is when you were winning county championships, like you fast forward, you see the Dr. Crokes team, and they had like 5 or 6 in, you know, you see the South Kerry team that won, they had 5 or 6 in. So it was like when you were winning county championships, it did make it easier.
It's so funny the way you talk about Maurice Fitz, all the amazing legendary figures from Kerry football in the last 40 years. I think he's the only one that walks around with this godlike status, this Peter Canavan-like status if he walks around Tyrone. I remember being in a hotel in Waterville a few years ago, and Morris walked in just for a drink.
Yeah.
There's a hush descends around the bar because and even though he's one of their own and he's a local, he's walked in and he's got this like Adonis-like features and he's the tan skin and he's tall and carries himself with it. I don't know, without a care in the world. He's just he's above and beyond the rest of them. Like even though he's got less metal in his pockets than the vast majority of you guys.
Yeah, but like I suppose the greatest compliment you could give Maurice Fitzgerald is that he grew up. He started playing when Cork were really performing, really in the ascendancy. 89, 88, 89. Morris's first year out of minor. Does he kick 8 or 9 points against Cork in the Munster final? And like, you talk about players, and like, if you were going to battle tomorrow morning and if you wanted to win a match, you'd probably say, give me Dara, give me Seamus Moynihan. You know, but if you were talking about the most skillful player that probably ever played for Kerry, give me Maurice Fitzgerald any day. And I suppose how I would define that is in terms of skill. I played with Gooch was the best forward I've ever seen play the game. But you give me, in terms of skill set, you go back to the 1997 All-Ireland final and you look at a player who's able to kick the ball off the ground on the sideline with his weaker leg. And like, it's a hard kick, it's an angled kick and it's over the bar. It's just the most skillful thing I think you can do. I don't think there's many that can do it. I'm sure there's one or two but that can do that. But like to do that from distance, for me, is just extraordinary. And like what a lot of people don't understand about Maurice Fitzgerald as well, he was a hardy boy. Yeah. He was tough. He was tough. He stood up for himself. He was a big man. If he needed to come out around the middle like he did in 97 where he caught that delightful ball, kicked it into Mike Frank, that beautiful goal, 2000 comes out again. Like he was just an incredible footballer, and I suppose one of my biggest regrets is that whilst I was on the panel, I never actually played with him. So that would be a big regret of mine that I never played with Maurice Fitzgerald.
Okay, well we've been chatting for about half an hour. We're still only in 2002 here. I knew this was going to get out of hand. Yeah. So I'm going to
hardly said anything about him. Do you know what at the start he talked about saying a lot without saying anything? He's managing to avoid himself a lot of these things.
We'll get to that. We will definitely try to get. No, he's giving off himself. I'm happy with his performance in the first half.
Okay.
So I'm going to put a statement out to the two of you, backed by nothing, and me just acting the maggot. Right.
This will be good now. Oh Jesus,
this is
I knew this was in the can.
The 2000s, unquestionably, the team of the decade are Tyrone. And every All-Ireland that Kerry won in that year, in that decade, 2004, 2006, 2007 and 2009, was a soft All-Ireland. Discuss.
You forgot one thing there. Go back there. You said 2004, 2006, 2007, 2009 and 2000. You forgot that.
Yeah, well, you weren't involved though.
Yeah, but Kerry. It was the team that you said.
Yeah, 5 All-Irelands to Tyrone's 3. Tyrone were the team of the decade for a couple of reasons. A, apart from the one where you beat Galway in 2000, which was a great Galway team after a replay, I'll give you that one. 2004, 6, 7 and 9, all handy soft All-Irelands, weren't forcing it out of second gear in any of those finals, and you just didn't have the stones to beat Tyrone in any of the games that mattered.
See,
Discuss.
No, I'm going to come in before he comes in because he's going to take my line. my argument would be, where were Tyrone the years they weren't winning it? And the years we weren't winning it, where were we?
Okay, go on. Elaborate on that, so.
Mark, you elaborate there because I don't want it. It's your interview.
Okay, look, I suppose to answer your questions, I don't think they were easy All-Irelands, the All-Irelands we won. First of all, we'll go with that first and we'll tackle the Tyrone issue afterwards. So I don't think they were easy All-Irelands. Case in point, I look at an All-Ireland as in the whole year. Okay? I look at an All-Ireland as in there's games we got through. I'll give you an example. 2007 All-Ireland quarter-final against Monaghan. That game was gone from us. And we managed to stick in there. We managed to that was a hard game. And to get over that game was tough, but we got there.
And Mossy Freeman that day, and he was...
Tomas Freeman, yeah. Tommy Freeman, yeah. I wouldn't go so far as to say he was brilliant. No.
But anyway, you were marking him, were you?
Yeah, he got 2 points. Don't get carried away. But anyway, no, he got a penalty, all right, in fairness to him, and he got 2 frees. But So, but he only
Not
got
that
two,
you remember the specifics of it.
He only got 2 from playing out. Let's be clear on that one. But anyway, it was a tough game. Jeez, they were a hardy team. And you had your man in the 40, he was like a bull, Rory Woods. My God. And you had Dick Clark in the middle of the field. They were tough, like. And we got over that one. But the way I look at it is you can only play who's in front of you. Okay? And we like Cork beat us in a couple of Munster finals. And you look at that Cork team. That was a hardy Cork team. And you could say then we throttled up again. We throttled Mayo in a couple of All-Irelands. But you look at, so like, I mean,
Cork had beat us in 09 in the Munster final, didn't they?
They had, yeah.
Yeah.
Was there no 6? We drew in Killarney.
I think we lost in Cork.
I think so. But we did lose in Cork.
We did.
We did.
got well beaten in Cork.
And we got booed. Declan got booed off the field, you know. So that one was funny actually when we lost that game because the bus was going back to Killarney. I think Jack missed the bus, so he had to get a taxi back to Killarney.
Jack O'Connor.
Yeah, and then there was all these rumours that he was fighting with us, but look, it was all rumours. But getting back to your question, Dave, of course it's always going to be thrown at us that Tyrone were the team of the decade because they won 3 and we won 5, but we didn't beat Tyrone. So of course that's going to be thrown at us. The way I look at that is I was playing in 0-3 against that Tyrone team, and you look at that Tyrone team, then they're looking at that from a point of view of Armagh winning the All-Ireland in 2002, and they're saying, geez, these guys can win it, why can't we win it? So there's no doubt, but we were completely surprised by what they threw at us in that 0-3. We weren't ready for that at all. And then we win 0-4. We play Tyrone in 0-5 final, and we're ready for this battle now. We're ready for these guys to to take them on and let's fight. They actually came out that day and they started playing football, to our surprise. Now, what you have to understand about these Tyrone fellas as well is, you can say that they were these like in your face, brilliant team. They were all of that. But they had exceptional forwards. They had exceptional players. They had exceptional defenders, exceptional forwards, and they were very well coached, very well managed. Their tactics were outstanding. The one All-Ireland we should have beaten them, there's no doubt, in my view, was 0-8. We should have won that game. To this day, I don't understand how we didn't win that game. I think tactically we weren't set up properly. I'd have loved if I was on Sean Kavanagh or Brian Dooher. I felt I was well capable of doing a job there. I was on Stephen O'Neill. Stephen, if you can remember back, was just had come back into the team
just for the final.
Yeah. So in my view, Stephen wouldn't have been up to match. So no, Stephen was a great forward, one of the best forwards Tyrone ever produced. But Stephen wasn't where he was usually at in that, and he was quiet in that game. I'm not saying that because I was marking him. I think he would have been quiet anyway in that game. But I remember marking Dooher in 0-3, and he kicked a point off me, and I kicked a point off him. And I remember there was a high ball that came out in the 0-3 semi-final against Tyrone. He would have probably seen me as this young guy now that I can get at. And a high ball came out between Dara and Kevin Hughes. And Dooher just caught a hold of me. We were waiting for the break, and he just caught a hold of me and started pinching me. Now, Brian probably won't like to hear this, but he just started pinching me into the stomach. So I just responded back, and I just started pinching him back, just like for like. And that was the end of that. There was no more of that for the rest of the game. But he was a fantastic footballer. He was end to end. He was like a Duracell battery. He'd keep going all day long. But I was kind of like that. I could keep going too, and I knew I could have done a job there on him. And also I felt at that stage I was now playing with confidence. 06, 07 were big years for me, and I felt I was now at the stage where I was probably felt as though I was a leader. And
You're the footballer of the year. You're the reigning footballer of the year at this moment.
Yeah, and
you're the linchpin of this Kerry defence.
Well, I don't know about that, but I felt as though I was playing with serious confidence, and I could have done a job on Dooher or on Sean Kavanagh. And I think if you look throughout the team, and I'm not it's fine to talk now and say, what if we did this? What if we did that?
But Darren, in his episode of the Square Ball, you said the same.
Yeah.
You said tactically in the 08 final,
Well, look,
Kerry got it wrong.
Like,
the two McMahons put on Tommy Walsh and Donaghy.
oh yeah, but we kept on firing ball. Kept on, like, I mean, come up with a plan B. But also, like, Owen Brosnan, who I believe in that game should have been played in a central position, throw him in the 40. What Tyrone had, they had two attacking halfbacks in Jordan and Hart, and we needed Owen in a central position where I think he was more effective. And we obviously, the whole thing too, the Paul thing, I suppose, didn't help in that he was he back, was he not back, and the whole lot. And there's all that going on in the background. And then there's the Declan goal scoring opportunity. You know, look, there's a lot of ifs there. And
But is this all hindsight 2020 talking? Or was this stuff that was being discussed either in the build up to the game when you're looking to get your matchups right, or during the first half, or in the halftime changing room?
oh, look, no, and back then when it's happening, I know, like myself personally, you're told, you're put on, you'd never kind of,
You wouldn't question
you do
nothing, yeah.
what you were told. You never question the manager, and you know, I mean, you'd have full respect for the manager and confidence in the manager that they were doing the right thing. But when you look back in it and you see where we went wrong, tactically, the boys got it perfectly. We didn't. I'm not taking away from Tyrone's win in any way. They were outstanding. They had an unbelievable football team. But I'm just telling you, in All Ireland, I think that could have got away from us. There's three when I think about it. There's 02, there's 08, and there's 2011. And that was one of them, I think, that that definitely got away from us. So to answer your question, the team of the decade. What was it? Just 5, was it?
5 and
5v3.
3. We were in 8 finals.
Well, what I think was impressive was, you go back to the dubs in the 70s, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79. We managed that in the noughties, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And, you know, the one thing I will say about Kerry, whenever we lost in All Ireland, whatever it was, we were able to bottle that hurt and come back stronger. We lost in 05, we came back in 06, and we won it as well in 07. We lost in 08, we came back in 09. So it just made us, you know, that bit stronger. Lost in 02, okay, obviously 03 went against, but we came back in 04. And lucky enough to have played with some of the greatest players that ever played.
What's it like walking around Kerry? Like if you're a dub, for example, you can kind of get yourself lost in the city, and it's not maybe as suffocating after a big defeat. There's other sports going on, and it's just such a big place. But say walking around Ventry or walking around Glen Bay the day after an All Ireland final defeat, or in the days after, say, losing the Armagh game or one of those Tyrone games, is it tough? Do you have to try and hide yourself away almost?
Yeah, it is tough. It is. It's tough. It's tough. Like the 02 one was very tough. 02, like, I mean, I felt that I left the side down in 02. It was a tough year for us, as it was the year that my dad passed away during the summer of 02. Dara was captain, Páidí was manager, so I found that one really hard. And like, geez, you definitely, and in Kerry, like, I mean, Darren will tell you, like, geez, the vultures come out. You know, like, what did Páidí say? The roughest type of effing animals, and he was right. Like, you know, I mean, like, who'd want to be a Kerry manager? Like, it's the toughest job known to man. I mean, Jack's there at the moment. He's being slated left, right, and centre because, like, we haven't won it in 2 years. You know, and I'd imagine there's ferocious pressure on him to deliver. There's like, but look, I suppose the one thing is that you look at the managers that were there. Pat lasted 2 years. I thought Pat was excellent. Jack has done really good. Jack has been, like, he's come back in. He's been, but like, I thought Páidí and Fitzmaurice were two managers who were able to take the slack. It didn't really bother them, phase them that much, particularly Páidí, because I suppose having played so much, you know, you kind of develop this kind of, I don't know what you would call it, like, you know, the negativity wouldn't even bother you, you know, because people always kind of put you down or whatever. But there are managers out there. I'd imagine Jack in his first tenure was very weary of the public, but as he won All Ireland, it got easier for him. But being a Kerry manager, I would imagine, is a very, very tough job.
Do you ever look back on those Tyrone games now, as opposed to me sitting here asking you about them today, forcing you to talk about them? But would that be the biggest regret of your career, that you just didn't get over the line in one of those games even? Because that would have, look, I jest, Kerry winning 5 All-Irelands in the same decade, clearly the team of the decade, right?
Yeah.
But the way that Kerry team is perceived outside of Kerry would be very different if you'd got rid of Tyrone in one of those years.
Oh yeah, if we had got rid of Tyrone in one of those years, there's no doubt. But look, I don't have sleepless nights thinking of that. The one regret I would have, it's no boast when you lose, but I played very well against Tyrone in all those games. Whatever it was about Tyrone, I always, I suppose, held up my end of the bargain, I felt. But my biggest regret would probably be the Armagh one. Because I didn't hold up my end of the...
But you're only a kid then.
Yeah, but look, if you go inside those white lines, you're old enough and you're big enough. And I felt I didn't hold up my end. So I have huge regrets on that. I feel I left Dara, Tomas, Dara in particular, captain, do you know?
So what's the banquet like that night for you?
Oh, jeez, it's just brutal. Brutal. I don't think... say Dara was the captain, I don't think he was even there, do you know? It's brutal, like. It's like a death in the family.
Yeah.
It's so bad, like. And
the cameras are there, aren't they? They do.
Oh,
they send shots back to the main
one or
Sunday game
one or
show.
two interviews, but nothing crazy. But like, no, that. If I look back in my career, and do you know that you hear these people saying, no regrets, no regrets. I think that's a load of bullshit. Like, do you know what I mean? Of course you're going to have regrets, like you're going to have regrets. I have regrets on that day. I felt I left the team down. Do you know? I mean, I look at other games and I say, could I have done something else there? Like, if you hold up your end of the bargain, you probably have lesser regrets. And that's what happens when you have 15 players on a team and you have 5 players coming in. It's not like you're Rory McIlroy going down the 18th and he has a regret that he took the 15 collectively. If you have 14 or 13 of those 15 that are playing well, I think you'll get over the line. And I think sometimes you have to have a small bit of luck. Sometimes that small bit of luck. Sometimes you don't have it. 0-2, Owen Brosnan bearing in on goal, just like that, misses it into that ball could be in the back of the net. And you know, you like the contrast to my one is Darragh Kinnaid in the 1997 final. He makes no bones that he had a really poor final, but Kerry got over the line. Do you know? And I suppose if I've regret, it's that I didn't hold up my end of the bargain. So
you're entering sort of another semi-barren period, certainly by Kerry standards. Obviously, by the vast majority of counties, it's not an issue at all that you don't win an All-Ireland between 2009 and 2014. But there's some really damaging defeats in there.
Yeah.
The 2010 game to Down was just such a shock. They caught you with a couple of goals, and it was, I think, the neutral that day were absolutely delighted.
Yeah.
I think all 4 provincial champions were beaten that year, which is astonishing. And then 2011, there's the McManaman goal and the Cluxton free, which is an epic day from a Dublin point of view, but devastation for Kerry again. And then 2012 and 2013, you lose these absolutely massive games, and you must feel as you're getting towards, you still have a few years left, but are you starting to wonder, and you're part of the setup as well, Darren, this next All-Ireland isn't going to come?
Funny, when Dara retired, I always felt we were taking a bit of water on board. I never felt as though we replaced Dara. You know, he was our Roy Keane, really. Like, if you were in trouble, he was the fella who used to always stand up. And I don't think we replaced him properly, but we definitely had a younger team coming through. And we played on, for example, the 2011 game. Again, I say we should have got over the line there, but you have to give Dublin great credit. They went for that towards the end of the game, where we 4 up.
You were.
We were 4 up coming into.
It seemed like you were in cruise control.
Yeah, we were and obviously that mistake over towards the Cusack stand side, and Declan, Ger Brennan did his work well that day on Declan, and Declan.
We don't forget anything.
Expand on that.
I know. Look, there was
big smirk in your face there when you say.
I think. Look,
Jared
there was a tackle.
Declan.
There was a tackle, and I think Declan was fairly dazed after it. You know, and don't get me wrong, Dave. I'm not saying that's the reason. Like, I Dublin, if there's Dublin people watching this, they'll say, what's he talking about? Dublin came really strong towards the end of that game. They showed huge character. And the goal, Declan's like reversing back and like what we needed in that situation. I think, was it Alan Brogan that had the ball, or was it I think it was Alan that had the ball maybe, and he gives it to McMenamum. But like, we needed somebody to push up, and we didn't, and look, there are little things that happen. And if we had won that one, maybe we would have stopped the Dubs for a small bit. They were always going to come, but we would have stopped them for a small bit. But look, do you know what? After that game, I was the first fella to go over and shake Alan Brogan and Bernard Brogan's hand. I was in college, the two boys. Myself and Alan in particular would be great pals. And you're in college with these fellas for 3 years, hitching rides from Alan's mom, bringing us all over the city, for Marie, bringing us all over the city for college games and Sigerson games and all of that. So then you see these fellas, and he played as long as I played and tasted no success. And when you see this fella winning in All-Ireland, you couldn't begrudge him, and so that's I'd be looking at it that way, very much so. But yeah, it was a tough one, but like nowhere near as bad as the 2002 defeat.
Before we wrap things up, I want to briefly talk about Donegal, because obviously they're coming again big time under Jim, and they're amongst most people's top two in terms of favouritism for this year's championship. So you play this McGuinness-led Donegal team twice. You play them in the 2012 All-Ireland series, and you play them in the 2014 All-Ireland series. Talk to us about what it was like to play against that Donegal team at their best, which they were in 12 and 14.
Yeah. Well, again, they were just like, every player knew exactly what they had to do. Jim, I would imagine, would have been very clear in his instructions of the game plan. And I'd imagine as well, the players who were coming in, no matter what position they were fitting into, they knew what Jim wanted from them. That was the first thing. Even as whoever, I actually remember, I don't remember who was in goal for Kerry that day. Was it Brian Kelly or... Not sure.
One after blanking.
Yeah,
well.
maybe it was Brendan Keeley.
I think it was Kelly.
Yeah, but Kerry take the kick out, and all of a sudden Rory Kavanagh is running as fast as he can, and another college buddy of mine as fast as he can to get back to that defence.
Literally, they turned their back on the ball.
And
just start sprinting towards their own goal.
So
it was alien, to be honest.
Yeah. So like, that was what you were faced with. So again, you had the ball, you had the ball, and I remember at one stage in that game, I get up the field and you're trying to get your shot in. You're trying to just basically, I remember I had one shot and it just curved off wide. But my biggest thing in that game was Donegal had the best of both.
This is the 2012 game.
2012 game, where we got sucked up the pitch, and then there was oceans, and myself and McFadden were down the other end, and there was 60 yards of space in front of... That's like matter for heaven for a forward. And like, that happened again for us though. I think like sometimes tactically we weren't... That happened again in 2011. 2011, I remember we played... So it happened in 2011, it happened in 2012. We were so exposed at the back. Back then we were playing man for man. That was the way it was. And I was on Andy Moore in the semi-final in 2011. It was the day Gooch got that great goal. And like, darn, that was your year, in fairness. And we were, what I enjoyed about this fella that year was, Darren was in Player of the Year form, and the All-Stars, Darren was shoo-in for the All-Star that year. But the All-Stars, whatever the GA decided to do, they decided to give the players a few bob. So the All-Star, as a result, is this tiny little yoke, like, a knock off. And it was the one year you got this All-Star. So he's kind of...
one you're getting a lucky bag.
Yeah. But anyway, getting back to it, we were very much, say, totally exposed at the back. And like in 11 against Mark and Andy Moore, and oh my God, the space in front of the two of us. And then same in 12 with McFadden. I said, what's going on here? And it was the same in 13. And we weren't changing up our style of play at all. And in 14, we eventually did. And in fairness to Eamon, he would have like brought the players in and all of this. You know, like, what do we think collectively as a group? And I think it's probably more powerful when the group are talking. And we did decide, it's probably well known now, we did decide to have those players who stayed. And if Donegal were getting back, that's okay. You can go back. We're still gonna be solid at the back.
But you guys are obviously watching the Dublin game in detail, and Eamon is poring over that every second of that All-Ireland semi-final in detail, and that surely informs the Kerry game plan to a massive degree.
It does, yeah, and there's no question about that. But I always bring it back to this. I think when you win these games, there has to be an element of luck as well. And like, say for example,
there's the Donaghy goal, obviously.
The Donaghy goal towards the end of the game as well, where they're coming in the play, and I have to leave McFadden, and whatever way the ball ricochets, it goes to him and it hits the butt of the post. So like, you can be so lucky and unlucky. So yeah, these are the luck of the draw.
You talk about the luck that evaded you in 2011 final.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you know, look,
yeah.
It's the way it goes. But look, we were very lucky. I was very lucky. Played in a great team. I think, was it Roy Keane? If you played long enough, you'll have more bad days than good days. And I lost 5 as well. You talk about start of the show about what I won. I lost 5 All-Irelands. If you throw in the All-Ireland club, that's 6 All-Irelands. So look, if you play long enough, you will lose a lot. Like, you know,
it's funny, we mentioned it before you actually came on, or talked about Marc and you in training, whatever, and like you talked about the collective there, and about 14 and having, it wasn't even keeping sweepers, it was just people holding their position.
Yeah.
But you'd have team meeting 4 games all my career in there, and yourself and Tom, 2 of the best to play in the backs, and you talk about protection, and you'd be met with, we'll sort that, but it was a given. Marc is on the best forward there, whether it be McManus or Bernard Brogan or whoever it is.
Yeah.
And it was a case of, he'll be fine. He'll be grand. He'd
Well,
probably chip in with a pint or 2 as well.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that, but like, what we always felt, we never expected sweepers or anything like that. What we wanted from the forwards was just push up in your men. Don't allow them to kick handy ball. Don't allow a forward to be able, or a player coming out to be able to put the ball wherever they want. And that was our philosophy. That was our game plan always. Forwards, when you have the ball, just go at them. If you don't have the ball, you put pressure on your man. Don't leave them out. And we did that for large parts, but obviously teams then come along and they change up their styles, and we were possibly a bit slow to counter-attack that.
Right, we've reached the end game, and I'm glad you mentioned the run that you guys had to the All-Ireland final in 2004 with An Ghaeltacht, and they were so memorable because you've got 2 tiny clubs with really rural populations in Caltra and with An Ghaeltacht. It's an incredible achievement. The last couple of years, so the 2015 final, which obviously there's only 3 points in that final on a really wet, awful day. Fenton's first All-Ireland final, and yet at no point did it feel like Kerry were going to win that match. I always felt like Dublin had you just at arm's length. You don't get a run that day. So is going into 2016, is the writing on the wall for you?
2015, it's funny, like, the way things work out. 2015, up until the All-Ireland semi-final, I was lifting, going as good as I felt. I was, I remember the Tyrone match, the semi-final before the Tyrone match in the 2015. I was getting out of the bed in the morning and cracked my toe off the corner of the bed and broke my toe. And the doctor, Mike Finnerty, he injected the toe, and first 15 minutes against Tyrone, absolutely lifting. Came out under the hugging stand, actually catch a ball, get a block down from one of the Tyrone players to stop a goal. And then, over by the sideline, I pull a Tyrone player down, black card, and I'm gone. And then the black card meant that another player could come in. So that was my game over. It wasn't as though it was a 10-minute, so I was gone. And I remember we beat Tyrone, and I'm in to let the toe recover. So I missed the next 2 or 3 training sessions before the All-Ireland. I come back in, and then I tear my hamstring, and it's not a bad tear. But I tell him, and I said, look, I will be right, I'll be okay. And the fact that I was playing well through the course of the year, I'd say he realised, you know what, but just the couple of training sessions before I tear it, I'm going really poorly. really poorly, and then I tear it, and then he picks his team and he doesn't go with me, and I tell him I'm going to pass the fitness test the night before, which I did. But yeah, no, it was, look, I don't know would I have made a difference that day. I'm not really sure. Tommy Welsh didn't get in either. It is tough to take when you don't get in. But 2016, then that was the reason I went back, because I knew I was still performing.
Yeah, you had been going well.
Yeah, and then the National League campaign in 2016, flying. National League semi-final against Roscommon, do really well, get up the field, kick a pint. National League final against Dublin. The 24th of April 2016, 100 years since the 1916 Easter Rising anniversary, huge occasion in Croke Park, and it's the day of my 36th birthday, and I'm marking Bernard Brogan, and what a disaster. Bernard destroyed me, kicked 3 or 4 pints, and I'd say after that then, very interesting after that actually, my brother Tomas writes a newspaper article, and he says, he throws myself and Aidan O'Mahony under the bus. He says, basically, what is Fitzmaurice at with the old players? Get rid of him. Your own brother, like, my God. I don't think I spoke to him for a while after that.
It's just a little bit of revenge for you sitting in the stands in Thurles in 2001 thinking,
maybe,
he's going to get a ban and I'm in.
I just want to say this before we go. We used to go to Portugal in the training camp.
That's a good one.
The crack used to be unbelievable. Like the messing, but the work you get done was unreal. But the crack and the messing used to be unreal. And it was back in the days where every training session had to have tackle bags. We were like rugby players hopping off each other. And the pitch used to be unbelievable. But you go out in the morning and be kind of a bit dewy, like, so we slip in.
Yeah.
And Fitzmaurice was taking the train. There would always be a bit of messing. He'd be kind of going, lads, you'd be quiet, whatever. And we'd be doing the drill. And you'd go out and you'd crash into a fella. And of course, the boys crash into each other. Myself, Mark, Tomas from the same group with a few more. And of course, Mark crashes into Tomas and gives him a whack, and Tomas isn't really expecting, gets a bit taken back. So next time Mark is going, Tomas pretends he's not looking. But as Mark goes to nail him, he just takes a step. So Mark hits the deck on the shoulder, but it's so dewy, he slides row 15 yards. I mean, we are creased, there's tears flying, and you can just see a man he talked about getting vexed when he was a child with the tears. This time it's embarrassment, he's getting vexed, we're crying with laughter, and all you're getting is his finger pointing. I'll remember that. I'll get you for that. Eamon's trying to control us.
We need to stop the session for 15 minutes.
It was just hilarious. And for days after, he's like, I won't forget it. I will get you for that.
Did you nail him?
I don't think so. Not yet. But I'll still get him. There's time, yeah.
One final story. You two used to mark each other inside in Fitzgerald Stadium or in Ostack Park.
And
there was there a dust up at one point?
There was a dust up because you see at that stage then we used to be rooming together. I would be very slow to kind of room with somebody unless I liked them, really got on with them. And I was with Brazzy for 13 or 14 years, and then kind of in and out. Then with Darren. But the thing with Darren, I used to have to tell Darren, listen, you better go to sleep first because I will snore, like. And so then this day anyway, I was coming out with the ball, and of course faced with this block of a man, like, and Darren strong on the tackle, and dirty enough, he gave me a little kind of an old belt, and I let it go and I passed off the ball and gave him a little dunt back, and then like whatever way it happened, myself and Darren were kind of scrapping, but then I was kind of in the back of my head saying, oh Jesus Christ, it's Darren, I can't, like, and Darren was kind of like, I'd say probably in the back of his head saying, oh fuck, it's Mark, I can't.
There's one of them ones where you can't back away.
Like this kind of like, and I'd say if you saw it, I'd say somebody'd say, who were those two sissies out in the middle of the field?
So it was one of the ones where you can't back away, but you have to throw something. Yeah. So it was a lot of open-handed, heavy petting.
It was actually, probably the lowest period of my life ever in a Fitzgerald
But it was so bad, nobody came to break it up. So it went on for ages, and neither of us could stop throwing what were open fists at each other. I just remember Mikey telling us after that, they were just laughing at us, the selectors going, what are the boys at?
It was one of the lowest periods anyway. Yeah, it was good crack though.
That was a sign, lads, your race might be ran. It's time to go.
Is there, apart from the regrets around maybe one or two games that went against you, is there anything you'd change?
No, I don't think so. No, I think very lucky. Just like, of course, there's regrets, but like, would I change anything? No, not a hope. You just was great years. You make mistakes in games, but look, that's just part of being human. Everyone makes mistakes. I was very lucky. Played with a great team. You know, you kind of put me on the spot there. Is there anything I would change? Off the top of my head, there isn't. You know, so I suppose, you know, just when you talk about it, there is there anything I could change? Possibly at the start when I started off. Physically, I could have been better, stronger. So, but those development squads weren't there at the time. So I possibly would have changed that. But then I think towards the end of my career, maybe, you know, I got a lot stronger, say, 2002, I'd say I was only 11 stone. Like. Then you fast forward to 2011, 2013, I was 13 and a half stone. 2.5 stone heavier, which is crazy when you think about it. So maybe at the start of my career, I would have put maybe a small bit more emphasis on the conditioning. But other than that, look, come here. These things, your career is what it is. There was no S&C back then. So, no. You know, there was a few games that went against us, but no, you wouldn't really change anything. Privileged to have played with the team, with the teammates, played against the best players as well. Like, we spoke about the Tyrone players, lucky enough to mark all those players. McGuigan, what a magician. He was a playmaker. Canavan, never marked him, thankfully, you know. But played with and against the best players that ever played. So, very lucky.
And a privilege to have been able to sit here with you for the last hour or so and walk down memory lane. And if somebody was to sit with a pen and paper and write down all the names that have been mentioned over the last hour, from Canavan to the Gooch to Morris Fitz to Spillane to Sheehy to Dwyer to Mick O'Connell. It's astonishing. Marc, thank you so much. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks, Dave.
Really, really enjoyed that. There you are, another amazing episode of the William Hill Square Ball podcast in the memory bank. We hope you enjoyed that chat with Marc as much as myself and Darren did. Do subscribe to our YouTube page. It's the At the Square Ball podcast or At the Square Ball pod, and like the video, send a review, give us an comment on what you thought about today's episode or any of the other episodes that you've listened to previously. If this is the first episode of the Square Ball that you've listened to, there's so much more in the archive. Go back in, delve as deep as you wish. There's some brilliant episodes, hurlers, footballers, camogie players, all in there. And we're only a few episodes into season 2. We've got an awful lot more coming your way. We'll have another brilliant episode for you next week. Don't forget to follow the at William Hill Ireland pages on Instagram and on Twitter. Loads more great sports content on there as well. Follow us on Spotify, search for The Square Ball or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next week, enjoy the football and the hurling coming up this weekend, and we'll chat to you again very shortly.